Happy 2026. I can't believe that we are here and what a wild world we're living in right now. And that kind of leads me to setting the intention for this show. And today's episode is really going to be all about what to expect in the next, 20 weeks after this, which will be the lead up to the release of my book called Just One Word. So, hence the Just One Word Live. And so basically, I just wanted to give everybody an overview of what can you be expecting as you tune in and see these episodes. Also, I want to let you know all will be recorded and they will be living on my website. And we'll probably be posting snippets of it all over the place on social media. So if you can't be here live, it's totally okay. But this is going to be a pretty unique situation as far as a show is concerned. And the reason that it's going to be unique is because, first of all, it's live. A lot of people kind of recommended that I don't do it live. They're just like, do a podcast. You can control it a bit more. You can kind of like do things in post production that you can't do live. And all the reasons that people were giving me to do that were all the reasons I actually didn't want to do it as a podcast because I was like, I want it to be real. I want it to be true. I want it to be in real time because one of the things that I'm noticing about so much of the content that is now online and even sometimes in our interactions with people or our world's leaders, you can't tell what's real anymore. And I want this to be real. I want this to be an hour of your week that you can come and learn about someone and have be witness to a very honest conversation where someone is sharing a lot about themselves and where someone like me who has built an entire career around seeing the simplified truth within them, that you can have that experience every week. And my hope is also that you're going to get curious about, well, what's my word? Because I really believe that we all have one word for this entire lifetime. So I'll go into that in a little bit, but I just wanted to begin with the intention that this show is real. Now, what I'm not going to guarantee is that this show is perfect. There's probably going to be little tech snafus, and there's going to be, me starting meetings on mute and things like that. But that's okay because that's part of the realness, and I think we all need to embrace it a bit more. So I want to go first on that and demonstrating that and just letting people know it's okay. It's okay not to be perfect, and it's certainly perfection is not a reason that you should hold back from sharing your message or putting yourself out there. So let's shift gears for a moment. Let's talk about you. I don't know all of you personally, but I'm making some guesses about you. The first thing is I noticed that people tend to come into my orbit when they are going through some kind of transition. This could look a lot of different ways. This could be your kids going off to college. This could be shifting your career. This could be losing a job, selling a company. It doesn't really matter if it's good or bad. It's just that place of not really knowing what's coming. And that's exciting and that's terrifying and all the things. Maybe you're curious about your purpose. Maybe you're curious about what that one word can be. And if you did have that one word, how would your life be different? And I can tell you from personal experience that it gets very, very different because then you have this North Star that guides you in all of the moments that you need it. So it doesn't solve all your problems knowing your word, but at least it helps you understand your own inner guidance for how to navigate through. So you might be wanting to simplify things a bit. I know this is something that my partner Dan and I talk about a lot. It's like a core value actually in our life now is to not overcomplicate things, to have a lot of spaciousness. And there is a beauty in having a one word purpose to align with versus like a whole plan or like 3,000 word manifesto. So the simplicity might be calling to you. Also, I tend to find people in my orbit who maybe think they have something to say, or they have had a hankering to write a book or to give a speech. Maybe it's a TED Talk, or maybe it's just a workshop at your job or even at the PTA. but some kind of little whisper inside of you is saying, maybe you have something to share here. You also might be a person who's been sharing a lot already. Maybe you've written several books. Maybe you've done all of that, or you have incorporated some thought leadership into your career or into your business. And you still have that little feeling of like, maybe there's something else. Maybe I'm missing something, or maybe there's more I can be doing. But regardless, I do tend to run with people who want to lead with their life. They want to learn and they want to share. And there are different seasons for this. And when I say that, I mean there is a season to like get out there and get public and like really just make some noise. And then there's also a season to go inward, to be a bit quieter. And I know that traditional like marketing out there would say, or content advisors would say, you just create as much content as you can and keep putting it out there. But that's really not my suggestion. I really believe that people are part of nature, right? Like we're human beings. And if you look at nature as a guide for how to be stepping deeper into our purpose and how to be sharing our messages, you notice there is spring and summer and winter and fall. And those all feel different if you live in a place where it has all those four seasons. They feel different. There's a different vibe to it. Today here in Colorado, it's lightly snowing, so it's like a very reflective kind of inner day. So but I think that it's good to think of this as seasons because all of us are going through life, and there's going to be times where you're bright and shiny and out there, and there's going to be times when you're a bit more introspective. I personally am coming out of kind of an introspective time because this whole last year I've been writing the book, and that is quite an experience. Even the year before that, so 2024 was also a deeply introspective time as I was caring for my best friend named George Morris, who was going through stage 4 cancer and passed away. And so I don't know if all of you might be able to relate to that, of like just certain times in life where you're just in it and you're going through it. And I know it doesn't always feel great, and I've certainly been there. But here's what I do know. I think that when we lean into that season, that is a moment where we can really discover a lot about ourselves because it's almost like the certainty of life before whatever change or challenge is in front of us, that certainty is gone. And so now it invites us to step into a new sense of knowing, really. And that's where the dig word really comes in handy, this one word, because it's just, again, it's that North Star that's out there. So anyway, back to you. What I know about the people that I have worked with that have subscribed to our Substack or have just stayed in my world is that you want to impact society somehow. You are a helper. You are one of the good ones. And maybe sometimes it is hard to be that. It is hard to be sensitive. It is hard to just want to help so much. And I think all of my company offerings have always catered to those people because I just think you are so special. And to zoom out, I think that everyone's life has a purpose. Everyone's. And everyone has something that they can share. And I feel like all life is learning something and then teaching something and learning something and teaching something. And maybe some of us aren't always teaching it in such like a big way, like doing a live weekly show or writing a book, but I do think that life is that continual cycle. And the people who I love to hang out with are the people who are always wanting to do that learning work. So I would say one final thing about the people that are in this community. I would say there is like this, the verb I think is compulsion. It's almost like you feel compelled to do something. You feel compelled to get deeper understanding of your purpose. You feel compelled to figure out if there's something that you could be sharing. You feel compelled to help people. And so I think feeling compelled is different than desire. Like when I sometimes will get referrals from people. I'm widely known as being a TEDx speaker coach and things like that. So sometimes I'll get people and they'll just want to get on my calendar and they just want to talk about how they can do the talk to go viral. As I have had quite a few clients who've done that, but I don't think that was ever our intention. Our intention was to be deeply authentic and to be a servant leader. And then that message just so happened to deeply resonate. And so if someone only has the desire, but they don't have the compulsion to help, to serve, probably not my people, and I'm good at making referrals at those times. So if any one of these things that I've just listed sounds like you, or sounds like someone you know, I would love to see you here every week if you have space for it, because I really haven't found many corners of the planet that has this kind of thing that we'll be talking about, and I want you to have a space for this. So, now I'll share a little bit about me. I know some of you probably have never met me before. Maybe you've been seeing me on social media or somebody shared my stuff, but I'm just going to speak from the perspective that, maybe you don't know what I stand for or what I've like been doing in my past. And so, I'm originally from the Chicago suburbs. I went to Eastern Illinois University for college, and I moved to New York City right after I graduated from college. I really wanted to be a TV producer, and so I did that. And I was only about a year into my career in producing documentaries and television shows and some dabbling in reality TV, as you know, classy. But yeah, I was only about a year into my career when one of my dear friends named Shannon McNamara, who was a sorority sister of mine at Eastern Illinois University, she was murdered in her college apartment. This was in 2001 in June. And it was just one of those situations, whereas I think I was 23 at the time. It just completely altered everything that I thought about the world, about safety, about um, being a person, being a woman, and especially living in New York at the time. It really just kind of gave me a lot of anxiety and blew open a lot of um, possibilities around how this can be such a dark and dangerous world. And um, about 3 months later, like almost to the day, 9/11 happened. And at the time, I was commuting to the World Trade Center every day because I had a job that was very nearby World Trade. And so I lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, but then I took the train in. And that was a deeply confronting experience. I know many people have lived through 9/11 in some way, shape, or form. Wherever you were in the world, it was one of those moments where it's like everybody remembers, right? And so for me, that double whammy of pain and just violence and murder, and it was a lot. And so um, I really wanted to do something. Like first and foremost, I needed for my own mental health, like how do you make sense of all that? As a young person who's just trying to start their career. And so I really wanted to do something. I wasn't sure what. I didn't know even what I had to offer. I mean, I'm just this young person. Like, what do I know? I didn't know anything about violence or, what to do about that. And, but I ended up just taking a baby step. I just wanted to learn, right? Remember that cycle, learn and then teach, learn and then teach, learn and then teach. And so I took a step back and I wanted to learn. I want to learn about personal safety, about violence prevention. I wanted to learn about what I wish that Shannon and I would have had in college as far as training or preparation, or like we just didn't have any of that. And so the more I learned about personal safety and self-defense, the more I started to realize that the highest risk group for violence is young women between the ages of 16 and 22. And I realized that I was just beyond the cusp of that. So it was almost like I had big sister energy to these people who were at such high risk and often didn't even know it. And I started to have the kind of the compulsion of, well, what if I taught it? They'd probably take it better from me than from a campus cop who's just spewing advice towards them that is often very blaming and victim blaming. And so that little voice was in the back of my head for a while. But then again, it was like, who am I? I'm young. I don't know anything. I don't have life experience. But the voice was there. And so the more I trained, the more I got certifications, and the more I was like, I'm just going to get out there and give this a shot. And so I started speaking. My first ever workshop was a girls fight back workshop at Eastern Illinois University, where my friend Shannon was killed and where we went to college. And we had some of the best memories of our whole life, and obviously the hardest of our whole lives. And that's where I've taught the first one. And I didn't know this at the time. Good thing. But 1,000 people ended up coming to that event. And this was really my first ever speaking engagement. And again, I had the imposter syndrome, like, oh my gosh, like I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm so young, blah, blah, blah. I had all the reasons. But at some point, this mantra came into my life. And it's so simple. It's 3 words. And it's use me well. Use me well. And it's kind of a prayer, and it's kind of a mantra, and it's kind of a meditation, but it's just like, what if like this human experience that we're having, it's just like we're a vessel. We're a vessel for something to pass through us. And what if we almost like offered this experience to a message, to something that's bigger than us, to come through and to help people? And it's a way of kind of getting the ego out of the way. And I see ego, sometimes it's even more damaging when we have ego that says imposter syndrome kind of things versus like, oh, I'm awesome, like that's like so ridiculous, right? But the imposter syndrome, that really has like some strong voice. And so, but if we move that kind of ego out of the way, we just say, use me well. And I stepped up on that stage, and I really was the channel that night for the words that these young women needed to hear, being on the campus where a murder had just occurred. It was cathartic for me to be among such supportive, emotionally moved people who were so invested in the topic. And after that, everything changed. It was really one moment of speaking truth that opened up so many doors. I ended up really building Girls Fight Back. Between 2001 and 2013, I was a full-time speaker on the road, sometimes over 200 days a year, speaking at every kind of venue you can imagine, from women's centers and colleges and outdoor quads, at some of these schools. They just throw you in the middle of a field and tell you to speak. I spoke to so many high schools and these auditoriums, and it was just the most incredible experience over those 13 years. And when I wasn't speaking, I was writing. I wrote a book called Girls Fight Back, The College Girl's Guide to Protecting Herself. We put out 3 editions of that. That was actually self-published after I went through a whole tumultuous thing with a publisher when I was probably 26. And I just wanted to do it myself. And back then it was way harder to publish. I actually was like on the phone with printers in Michigan, it was a whole different world. Thought leadership is so much easier now. But anyway, I was also writing a column for Cosmo Girl magazine. And it was the first ever monthly recurring column dedicated to women's safety and self-defense. And so all of these things, like it was like door would open after door would open. It was just like so serendipitous, but it's like when we use that mantra of like, use me well, it's like things just start to open up. And when we're deeply purpose driven, the doors just kind of appear in front of you, and then it's your choice to walk through them or not. So after about 12 years of running Girls Fight Back and really getting the best education I could ever imagine as a public speaker, because I will tell you, the best teachers for public speaking are just like teenage kids in a gymnasium that don't want to be there. They will tell you where you suck. They will throw things at you. They will heckle you. Like, it is wild. You do not do that for self-esteem boosting. You do that because you are there to serve. But in the process, what it taught me was being real. Because young people, if you are sharing a message with them, if you're not real, they see right through you. They call your bullshit and they tune out and they will, check out. So it taught me how to be present. It taught me how to be real. And one of the reasons that I think I ended up selling Girls Fight Back, by the way, the people who took over the company was actually my speaking agent, who had been booking all of these programs. And over the years, I had trained about 6 other Girls Fight Back speakers. And so this agent was just like, okay, well, I'll just take it over. And she continued booking all the speakers. And today it's run by a wonderful woman named Nicole Snell. And so it continues today, which is really, really cool. But for me, it was kind of the end of a season, you know? And I had just had my daughter, who was my second child. And this is kind of crazy, but again, paying attention to these serendipitous signs. Um, I gave birth to my daughter on Shannon's birthday. Isn't that wild? Like, you don't get to pick those things. And June 12th, or I'm sorry, June 21st, um, Shannon was murdered on June 12th, and her birthday was June 21st. And my daughter's birthday was June 21st. And so it's the summer solstice. It's the day with the most light. And it was just like, just, I remember after I gave birth to Phoebe, the next morning I had to like, I had her at like 4:30 in the morning. I had to wait till 7 in the morning to first call my mom, and then I called Shannon's mom. And we just cried on the phone. It was just awesome. And I just knew that it was time to move on. And this part of the story is important because this is when I started to realize the work that I do now. This is when the dig started coming into view. Because in letting go of Girls Fight Back and not having to be responsible for that anymore, it gave me a opportunity to go into a winter season, to be introspective, to really unpack 12 wild years of speaking and writing and being on like live New York morning shows and just a really crazy life for a long time. And maybe you can understand this feeling, but like after you go through a really intense chapter, when that finally that moment of quiet sets in and you're able to be like, what was that all about? And I remember trying to unpack those 12 years. And what I realized is that there was probably one word driving this whole thing. And when I say one word, I mean, it's a frequency, right? I don't just think of one word as a label or a brand. If you hear the word freedom, there's a feeling to it, right? Maybe when you hear the word freedom, you think of a bald eagle or going on vacation to the tropics or having inbox zero, whatever your definition of freedom is, there's almost a feeling that you get in the body. And after I sold Girls Fight Back, I was like, what was the one word? Like, why did I actually do that? Because obviously I adored Shannon McNamara with all my heart. I still do. And that in itself was enough. But I wanted to go even deeper than the story, right? I wanted to get to the truth. I was like, did I do all that because it was about empowerment? Was it about retaliation in some weird way? Like almost avenging her murder somehow through education? Or what? Like I went through so many different frequencies to kind of try it on and figure out what it was all about. And then I remembered the moment that I had this idea to do Girls Fight Back. And it took some digging, which is why, by the way, I call it the dig, because it's not about creating something through this one word. It's about remembering it. And it's always in your story. That's why we go backwards to figure out how to go forwards. But I remembered this moment. It was the night before Shannon's wake. And all of the sorority sisters, who are our mutual friends, came over to my parents' house in Schaumburg, Illinois. And we had a bonfire because everybody was just like so shell shocked at what had happened. And so we were sitting around this bonfire. And I remember everybody just feeling so scared. And at this point, I think the person who had killed her had not been caught. And so, I mean, it was terrifying. And I started hearing these young women say all the things that they were going to either do or stop doing as a result of now realizing what a violent world we live in. I was hearing them say that they wanted to cancel the trip that they were going to take to Europe because clearly it's not safe for a woman to be backpacking alone. Or somebody who was living with a guy they were dating and it wasn't a great relationship, but sleeping alone in your apartment is a really dangerous thing, so we should probably just stay together. And somebody else talking about an internship. that was downtown Chicago and would require them to have to walk through a creepy parking lot. Maybe I should just work in the suburbs, right? And that night at that bonfire, and then weeks following, I was just really attuned to hearing about all the things that women were doing to be more safe from being raped or killed. But the trade off was that they were not living their authentic life. And one of the things that I look for when I am digging someone, and you'll see this in the show, one of the things I'll often look for when I ask them questions about their life story is about things that piss them off, things that trigger them, things that just set you off that maybe other people are like, what's your problem? That is gold to me. That is a neon sign pointing to your truth because what that is a violation against what you stand for, who you are, what's important to you, and your frequency overall. So, what I realized is that I got pissed when I started hearing about all my strong, beautiful, brilliant, talented, educated, badass friends talk about how they weren't going to live the lives that they wanted to because of these people committing violence. Like, what? While it was intellectually understandable, I was mad. And so the violation was authenticity. And so once I realized that, I was like, wait, so did I build this whole like international movement because I want women to be real? I want them to be honest. I want them to live the authentic life that they feel called to live. Yeah, that's what it was all about. And when I realized that, and I looked back on the books that I've written and the magazine columns and the speeches and the media interviews and like the teaching and the giving, I was just trying to give them the tool to be who they were. That's it, full stop. And if I had known that sooner, I think it really would have helped me out. Like if I would have known that this was a women's safety and self-defense company, almost masquerading as like an authenticity company, like, or it was actually an authenticity company. It was just masquerading as like a women's safety and self-defense. It was just like a throughway to give women the tools to live that. If I had known that my one word for my life was authentic, I just think that having that North Star would have shed light in some moments that I could have really used it. And so as I was starting to ponder what was next, I knew that there was something to this. So let's now talk about the dig. Now, my book, Just One Word, is all about the dig process. In fact, the book was originally going to be titled The Dig, but the two publishers, I have a publisher in the United States called Hachette, and then I have a publisher also in the UK, so that's kind of fun. And that's called Atlantic Books. And both publishers got on a Zoom call with me a few months ago, and they were like, "Hey, we think the dig is cool and everything, but like people aren't going to know what the hell it is." I was like, "Good point." So anyway, that's why we called it Just One Word, because just one word is the outcome of the dig process. But the book itself, chapter by chapter by chapter, is completely pulling the curtain back on this process that I've developed. And I held nothing back. I gatekeep nothing in general. It's part of the whole authentic life path. But it really is a process where we share our life story. And you're going to see this in the show for the next 20 weeks. I'm going to interview these authors, these founders, these change makers about their life story. And it's only going to be an hour show. So it's going to be a challenge, but I have done a few test runs and it is definitely possible. The hard part is that you have to like kind of like move them through the story pretty quick, and the stories are so fascinating. People's life stories. Oh my gosh, this is my job. I get to listen to people's life stories for a living. It is the best. But anyway, I'm taking them through their life story because what I'm looking for is I want to hear about the person when they were a child. I want to hear about the person when they're as they're going through childhood into young adulthood. I want to hear about adulthood and then all the way up to present day. So however old they are, that could be different amounts of life phases. But what I'm looking for is almost like themes. I'm looking for one word themes that pop out. Okay, what did this person do when they were a kid and a teen and a college student and a young adult all the way to present day? And we look for these one word themes that keep recurring. And what I found is that everybody has this. Now, keep in mind, I've done like over 1,000 digs. And so at this point, I am fully ready to claim that I know how this works. For a long time, I was like, maybe I'm wrong, but everybody, I will tell you, everybody has a life story that within it, you have repeating themes over and over and over again. And to someone like me who has a trained eye to find those, to identify them, and then to show them to you, oftentimes people's response when we move on to the next part of the dig, which is figuring out their operating system, that's basically when I take these one word themes and I put them all on one screen. And I say, okay, let's leave your story behind now. And now let's just look at these themes that popped up. And I will tell you that people's experience of this is oftentimes very emotional because it's almost like this almost makes me emotional to think about like so many people go through life and they just aren't seen. And then someone like me like rolls in and I'm just like, oh, hey, yeah, you're all about this and this and this and this. And that's just, it's just tears because they're like, I've been seen. This is incredibly validating. And I think every human being deserves that. And so we take these themes and usually on a page I'll through someone's life story I'll have like maybe 20 or so words that will emerge. And then it just becomes a game of whack-a-mole. Then I present these themes in the way that I see them. Sometimes these one-word themes are a circle. Sometimes it's an arrow. Sometimes it's a tree. Sometimes it's a math equation. That part is very intuitive as far as like how I am reading the frequencies that are landing on this page. But I present this shitty first draft of an operating system to the person, and then it just becomes a process of remembering. And it's it's beyond like a mental remembering because remember we're out of the story by this point. We are only in their higher level truth of these themes. So it's emotional, it's clarifying. The cool thing that I can't wait to show you all in the show is how ridiculously different everybody is. And one of the things that I will say is when I'm on a call with a new person, usually people will say something like, I'm not 100% sure I have something to share, or hasn't this already been done before, or aren't there better people out there to be talking about this, or those sorts of questions. And maybe some of it is imposter syndrome, but I also think that some of it is like legitimate. They don't know. And guess what? I do. I know because I listen to people's life stories for a living and do this for a living. I know that every single person has a story and every single person has a message. The cool thing is that every person's message is going to be unique. Why? Because no one has your story. Somebody might have um, interesting, similar one word themes rolling around, but they don't have your story to overlay on it. They don't take the meaning from that story the way that you do. So, my point here is that every single person is unique. Every single person's message is unique. And that's what the dig basically unearths. We don't create stuff, we remember it. And I am the excavator, and the person going through the process is the rememberer. And then once we remember and we distill and we get this operating system down to just one word, that's when it really starts getting interesting. Because if you think of the operating system almost like a sports team, it's the sports team of you. Okay, so think about your favorite sport. Your operating system is the sports team of you. But the team needs a captain. The captain calls the shots. Sometimes the captain, like think about exposure to sports in your life, right? Sometimes the leader is like extremely boisterous and funny and out there. Sometimes the leader is actually the real quiet one and the strategic one. So sometimes this word is a bit of a sleeper in your operating system. Sometimes it's like, pow, out there, super loud. But there's always a word. There's always one word that's calling the shots. And when we get to that one word, then everything in your life starts to make a little more sense. Now you're like, oh, I did that because of this, or this really upset me because of that. And so the goal with this show, the goal with the book, the goal with this method overall that I've taken all these people through is to help people remember so that they can take what's unconscious and bring it into their conscious. When we remember our operating system, not only is it just handy information to have about yourself, but also your operating system, which is 10 words or less, so it's hyper distilled, that is also your method. You might have heard the term, oh, that's the method of their madness, right? Um, I don't think it has to be madness. I don't even know if that's a thing, but I definitely know that we all have a very unique way of doing things. And your operating system explains that. Here's what's cool about that. When you understand your method, your order of how you approach life, and I'm telling you, this applies to hard decisions you have to make, workshops you need to teach, how you parent, the people that you seek around you to be in relationship with of any kind. Your operating system is driving the bus on all of that. It's also your method. It's your step-by-step how to you do that, in what order. Your method, for those of you who feel that compelling feeling to actually take this and teach it, your method becomes your message. Because all your message is teaching about your method. And your method is the thing that you are the most expert in the world at because you have been living it your entire life. So your story reveals your method. Your method is your message. And one of the best pieces of feedback I get when I'm at the very end of someone's dig intensive, when we've gone through the whole process and we're in like the final minutes of the intensive, they'll often just be like, even if they were a person who came in, they maybe wanted to do some speaking stuff, but they were like, oh, I'm so nervous, I'm so scared. They always say to me, I could talk about that all day long. And that's when I know we nailed it because it is the most natural, obvious, ingrained process that you've been living your whole life. You are an ultimate expert in your operating system. And so when we can actually turn that into things, it creates such an ease-filled way to share your information, to educate people, to share of any kind. So that's why I created the dig, so that people could have this level of self-understanding earlier. I discovered it in a very stumbly sort of way. I'm still discovering it for myself in a stumbly way. But I discovered it kind of after a major chapter, and I want it to happen sooner. So some people sometimes wonder, how did I even stumble upon this? It was partially the self-reflection after Girls Fight Back, but I would have to say that it really kicked in when I started working for TEDx Boulder. So I started doing that in 2012. And at the time, it wasn't called The Dig. I didn't even know if I was going to be a great speaker coach. I knew that I was a talented speaker because I'd spent so much time on the road and got schooled by these teenagers. And they turned me into an awesome speaker because you don't have a choice. I knew that, but I didn't know what I could do for other people. And so what I notice is when people go into like, oh, I have to say something, I have to give a speech, they start to freak out. And so intuitively, I was just like, why don't you just tell me your story? Just tell me your life story. And that's how this whole thing started. And then the people I was working with, they were kind of going viral after that. And I don't know that it was because of it being the best speech that people had ever heard, but what I think they felt a level of connection, a level of authenticity that made that person's speech feel like the message their soul needed to hear. And that's the fun thing about operating systems and dig words, is that you might be the expert in worth, Maybe that's your dig word. And I might be the expert in authenticity and through all of my failings and successes. But everybody gets to share them. Everybody gets to teach them to other people. And there's so much to be learned, which is another reason why I have the best job in the world, because it's just like I just get to learn from epic humans all the time. And it's about things I don't know about. So so that's a little bit about the dig. And the book came about very serendipitously. Actually, a client of mine asked me to talk to an agent because this agent was looking for a speaker coach who could contribute to one of the agent's author's books. I didn't want to do that, but I offered just to hop on a call with this agent because I just wanted to help. And I was going to make a referral. And by the end of the call, she was like, okay, thanks for the referral, but like, what do you do? And I was like, I do this thing called the dig. And I gave her a short version of what I just explained to you all. And she was basically like, you need a book about this. And I'm like, no, because I knew it was going to be hard. And it was. And it's long. And it's books are amazing. They're magical. They're transformative. They just talk about a season to go through, right? They wring you inside out. It's the ultimate like of just soul diving and vulnerability and I knew that because I had done a book before and I coached so many other people to do it, but I also knew it was the time. I felt compelled to say yes, and I did. And so that's really been the last few years. And what kept coming up and what led me to doing this show is that I realized that people needed a demo because in the book, I'm taking you through all the steps of what I do with people to get to their operating system into that one word and how to integrate it into their life, work, and message. But I knew people needed to see it because it's one of these things that's hard to explain sometimes. I think me and my team have done the best job that we could do to explain it in book form, in like words on a page. But I wanted you all to have a companion guide in the show to like actually see the kind of questions I ask, to see the kind of responses that people give. And I'm definitely curious if some of you end up watching a series of shows or at least a good handful of them, if you start to kind of pick up on it, of the things that I'm doing, the things that I'm seeing. And that would be just like deeply, deeply satisfying for me. And the reason for that is because I want everyone to know how to do this. And I know that a lot of times when people write a book or they put their stuff out to the world, sometimes people get a little weird about intellectual property and like, oh, are people going to steal my stuff? And I'm like, please do. Like, could we please have a more authentic world here? Could we please have a more connected and compassionate and vulnerable way of showing up as human beings? Like, can you imagine the workplace, how the workplace would be if everybody understood everybody's word and actually like valued them through that lens and really made accommodations for them based on like how they do their best work? That's actually something I've done with some companies over the past few years of like, how do we take these words and actually like amplify people in their roles through their words? It's so possible in relationships if people actually were very cognizant of each other's words, not from the perspective of the differences that brings up, because two operating systems are never going to be even similar, but to honor them, you know? So there's no gatekeeping. I want to demo this. I want you to see it. And I just wanted it to feel real for you all, because I really feel like, we need more leaders who know how to do this. We need more people that can connect to people quicker and in more impactful ways. And if you are one of these people that I was speaking about in the earlier part of this program today, if you feel compelled to share, even if you don't know how, even if you don't know what the message is or how you're going to put it out there, if you feel that like little whisper in your ear and you want to start sharing it, there is actually there's a whole way to build thought leadership. And for some of you, maybe this is a new term. It actually took me quite a few years to like figure out this is actually what I was helping people do. But thought leadership is, I actually looked up the definition. There's a lot, but here's the one that I resonate with. A person that is a recognized authority in a particular field or whose innovative ideas influence and guide others. So it's really like guiding the way other people think about things and using our life story, using our experience, using our education to do that, to give your knowledge as a gift to other people who maybe uh, just don't know how to do that yet. And remember, like when I started Girls Fight Back, I was 23 and I didn't like know anything. I had a few certifications, but it's almost like the expertise that I brought in that moment was the fact that I was just like the girls I was speaking to, just a little bit older. That was the magic. It was the fact that I didn't know a lot that made me even more effective. And there were people that tried to steal the idea and stuff. It never worked out because they were men and they were older and they were martial artists. They were everything that I wasn't. And they thought that made them more qualified, but it actually made it not work because the magic was in what I didn't know and my willingness to learn it and share what I knew and then be the bridge to connect them with people who could do the more intense hardcore classes that I wasn't qualified to teach. So even if you're not the end all be all person on your subject matter, I would love to challenge people to claim more thought leadership about whatever you're doing because you're living it. You know it. Um, and sometimes it comes from our deepest pain. And there is a way to infuse this into your career, into your life, into your work. There's also ways to monetize it too. I've built all of my businesses have been thought leadership businesses. I have wanted to just teach people and share people and share with people. And I knew that you have to figure out the business side of that. In fact, I wanted to show that to you today because it is so hard to figure this stuff out. This is in the spirit of realness, this is a drawing. I call it the thought leadership ecosystem. Okay. So I drew this on my cool Vibe board TV back here, which is like the funnest little, it's like a digital dry erase board. And so I really wanted people to understand this whole process. So I start here at purpose, right here in the center. This is the dig. This is why I don't work with people to build anything on the outside until we know this. And here's why. Because the purpose is almost like it's like the sun. It's like the center of your whole system. And until you know what word needs to be radiating out, even if that one word isn't like named all the time, the frequency is felt. So if you don't know what that is, it's really hard to build the rest of this stuff. If you don't know what that one purpose word is, what you can do is you can become a subject matter expert. That you can do. But thought leadership from like a deep soul purpose level is not going to be possible unless you do the center stuff. And like I said, when you get to your purpose, it's also revealing this method. Everyone has a method. Everyone has a method. And then the message is talking about your method that is based on your purpose. And then at some point you have to let it live somewhere. Maybe you have a website for your company or for yourself or even a page. I work with University of Colorado. If you work with them for years and most of the academics there, they usually have a page within the company website that is like for the purpose of claiming their thought leadership, like what they know, what their education is. And so in that kind of copy, you can capture your method through your message and put it somewhere. So that's really what I mean by brand. So this should just be at the center of these ideas that we're wanting to share. And that's what the dig method is all about. Because if we hop right into any of these bubbles and start just putting our stuff out to the world, there's just a level of disconnection that doesn't feel great. But I'll talk real quick about these bubbles of what you can do. Like, so once you figure out your purpose, your one word, your operating system, your method, your message, you got all that stuff. What do you do with it? Well, you can speak it. So speaking, it could be so many things these are just my little scribbles, just a few off the top of my head. It could be keynotes. It could be sitting on a panel and being interviewed with multiple people. It could be running a workshop. It could be doing a webinar like today. It could be doing a TED Talk. It's just you speaking, you teaching, you sharing, leading a class. You can do writing over here, top right. This could be books. This could be blogs. This could be articles. This could be newsletters. We write a Substack, myself and Dan. Just anything. It's just you putting your truth, really just this sun, and you're putting it in the written form. You could also do media down here in the bottom left. Media could be podcasts, could be going on other people's podcasts, doing your own podcast, could be putting stuff out on social media, which you all know the opportunities are endless now. You can do lives, you can do images, you can do audio, you can do music. And then you could also go old school. You could do TV, you could do radio. And then finally, bottom right here is offers. How do we take all of this purpose, this method, this message, and this brand? How do we actually turn it into things that people go deeper with than just say watching a reel? And this is what's missing from a lot of people who are trying to do thought leadership businesses. They don't have the center sun radiating into something that they can package and sell and guide people through. And for me, I have a very abundant perspective on I believe that people should be compensated if you're sharing what you know. Like some of the stuff is free, of course, but I've worked with a lot of activists who sometimes struggle with that idea and they think, oh, well, if I'm doing a good thing, I shouldn't be paid for it. That's just not how this capitalistic society works. Hate to break it to you. And I feel like more authenticity is possible if there is more abundance. It makes you able to be more generous, and people are willing to do this. So turning your sun here into programs, into courses, into services, into products. This could be coaching, this could be consulting, but like taking them actually through a method that is deeply you is very different than just showing up to a coaching session. And it also gives you the ability to create a company around it. Maybe other people learn your method. I know I have 13 trained facilitators in the DIG and Head Heart Core, one of my other methods. I trained a whole bunch of girls to do Girls Fight Back. And if I hadn't done that, the company would have stopped because I was pregnant through many of the later years and wasn't going to be traveling around on airplanes and doing all that as much anymore. So the beautiful thing about this, I'm going to stop sharing now. The beautiful thing about this is that messages are even bigger than the messenger. And I believe part of the cool thing about being a human being is that we have consciousness to be able to receive these messages, to be able to like say, use me well, and turn it into all this cool stuff that can just improve the lives of other people. That to me is just one of the most exciting things in the world. So going back to the show, and also I wanted to give you just some next steps if there's anything in here that resonated with you here today for yourself or somebody else that you know. But the show is basically going to be me interviewing people who are not only purpose-driven, not only are they doing good stuff in the world, they're creating interesting messages, but they've also built like a platform around it. They built this, I call it an ecosystem instead of a platform, just because it feels more alive and based on this whole idea of just nature is our teacher. They have built successful speaking careers, or they're doing a podcast, or you see them online and they're offering things, they're doing courses, they're leading workshops, they're doing events and retreats and writing about their experiences, and they're making it accessible to people to know their truth. So that's why I'm going to be digging those people, because sometimes we might find ourselves resonating with a certain person, but we don't even know why. I thought it'd be fun to actually like hear a whole person's backstory, which sometimes you don't get when they're these more public people, and then to be like, oh, I knew it. Their whole thing was about intention this whole time. Their word is intent. And wow, that's why I resonate with them so much. And it all just kind of makes sense. So I hope you enjoyed the show. And if anything that I've shared here today resonates with you, I did want to share also that through this whole book process. I have two offers that I am running right now. The first is the Dig Intensive. If you want to go through this whole process, you want to really learn about your story and your operating system and your method and your message and what to do with it and how to infuse it into your stuff. The Dig Intensive basically breaks it all down. I do them on Zoom. I also host people here at my home in Colorado. And so if you want more information about that, you can just go to erinweed.com/coaching. The second thing I'm super stoked to really offer for the first time, it's kind of a relaunch, but it's a relaunch for 2026. If you've been following me for a little bit, you might remember back in 2012, the first company I launched around this whole idea of the dig was called Evoso. And it's a made up word, EVOSO. And it basically means evolve society. And I wanted to work with these people. At the time, I was mostly coaching TED speakers. I wanted to take all the experience that I learned from my time at Girls Fight Back and teach people how to build these thought leadership platforms around it. And so it was running pretty strong until COVID, and then everything just like shifted, right? I turned a bit more into like a coach going into companies and stuff around that time. But we're doing a resurgence of Evoso because all the pieces have come together now. And that whole ecosystem that I just showed you is basically what we're taking people on a journey to do. So it's called the Evoso Thought Leadership Accelerator. And it's a 1-year program that includes digging, and then it also includes planting the message once we dig it all up, and then also growing thought leadership businesses around it. So we call it Dig, Plant, Grow. And it's all over a year, and it's a combination of working one-on-one with me and my team. It's bringing in top mentors and people from my personal network to open up some doors for people so that they can be pursuing the speaking, the media, the writing opportunities. It's also the power of a group because we're taking people through in cohorts. So if this is ever something you would want to build or get curious about, you can go to erinweed.com/accelerator. Or just hit me up at Erin Weed anywhere on social media. Our email is hello@erinweed.com. And I'm always happy to hop on a call and talk about these different offerings if you're curious as well. So really that brings us to the final 2 minutes here of today's show. I hope that this has helped you understand what I've been doing more. I've had several people just be like, what are you actually doing? I thought it was just a really good question. So pulling back the curtain so that you can just see what's going on backstage and this work that I've been doing for quite some time. And just, it fills me with such joy to be able to see people and to amplify people as who they really are for the collective benefit of the rest of the world. Like, it really is important that we get back to being real, to being transparent when necessary, to being authentic as much as possible, because this is how we make connections with people. And we've never needed that more than right now. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward in future episodes to showing you all of this in action. It will never be me talking for an hour again. It will only be me digging other people or me talking to people I've already dug and talking about kind of the aftermath, if you will, of like what they did with their words. We're going to do a few of those as well. So I hope you have a beautiful day. I will see you at the next Just One Word Live.